New York's lack of megatall skyscrapers actually has nothing to do with engineering. It's entirely feasible to build over 600 metres high in the city thanks to solid bedrock and an incredible amount of expertise in the local area. If you wanted to build a megatall, then you could. But that's the problem. Hardly anyone wants to build a skyscraper that high in this city for a whole host of reasons. Firstly, there just isn't the demand. Manhattan's office market, which drove construction of the Empire State, World Trade Center and One Vanderbilt, had become saturated before the pandemic and will likely take some time to recover afterwards. The luxury real estate market, which drove the construction of several super slender towers from small parcels of land along Billionaires Row in recent years, has also been cooling off. Those structures only really became financially viable because of the prices they were able to command for their location and park views. You couldn't let commercial office space for anywhere near the same rate. Past megatall skyscrapers have cost well over $1 billion to construct, so any developer would need to recoup a pretty considerable sum from office or residential lets to make a profit. But past megatall skyscrapers were not constructed in New York, a market that frequently tops the list of the world's most expensive cities to build in. Projects here cost several $100s more per square foot to build than in the Middle East or Asia.
Urban development is one of the main ways that human beings impact the Earth. From the structures that we call home, to our schools, hospitals, workplaces, and the infrastructure that we travel on, our built world now accounts for a significant portion of all greenhouse gas emissions produced worldwide. From initiatives to make entire cities carbon neutral, to innovations in concrete manufacture and even smog-eating buildings, the construction industry is beginning to recognise its role and respond. But much more needs to be done, and at a faster rate. To make a real difference, we must reach beyond the construction sector and enable each and every one of us to better understand how our buildings are impacting the planet. Technology can play a key role here, particularly in the form of the digital twin systems that have supported other sectors for many years. Creating a digital replica of a physical building that actually behaves like the real structure and provides crucial information on real-life performance can enable us to better understand how our buildings are performing and simulate how they may perform in the future under a range of scenarios. Leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning, these so-called digital twins can improve energy resilience, reduce operating costs, increase resource efficiency, and help to decarbonise our buildings.
On the 27th of April 2020, China's Ministry of Housing and Urban Rural Development issued a notice that introduced measures to, in its own words, further strengthen the management of urban and architectural features. The document, which we've translated from its original Chinese, restricts the blind planning and construction of super high-rise skyscrapers and states that new buildings over 500 metres in height are not allowed to be built. The notice also heavily restricts the construction of any buildings over 250 metres in height, except where absolutely necessary, and where permission is granted, those towers will be subject to intense reviews by the firefighting, earthquake and energy-saving authorities. In addition, local governments are now required to tighten the approval process for towers taller than 100 metres, protect natural areas and historic buildings, and appoint chief architects to ensure that any new architecture better represents Chinese culture. The policy also bans plagiarised or copycat architecture, a controversial and head-turning trend which has seen a number of the world's most famous buildings replicated across China in recent years.
Normally when people talk about symbiosis, they're talking about two different types of organisms cooperating to help each other survive. For example, clownfish hide from predators among the tentacles of sea anemones. In return, they feed the anemone with their own droppings. Yum yum. The anemone and the clownfish enjoy a symbiotic relationship. In biology, however, symbiosis has a broader definition than simple cooperation. It's classically defined as any long-term living together of unlike organisms. Let me say that again. Symbiosis, the long-term living together of unlike organisms. Mutualistic symbiosis, or mutualism, is when both partners benefit from the relationship, like we saw in the clownfish and the anemone. When I say that both partners benefit from the relationship, what I mean is that both organisms experience a significant increase in evolutionary fitness. They both end up being better at surviving and reproducing. Parasitic symbiosis, or parasitism, is when one benefits while the other is harmed. Ticks are a good example of a parasite. They drink your blood and then sometimes repay you with Lyme disease. Total jerks. Commensalistic symbiosis, or commensalism, is when one organism benefits while the other is not dramatically helped or harmed.
Water. It's the most important substance on Earth. Without it, we wouldn't survive. It's also helped power our lives for more than a century. More than 6% of our nation's electricity comes from hydropower. And as wind and solar power continue to grow, water can also play an important role in bringing more renewable resources onto the power grid. One way is by storing energy through a technology known as pumped storage hydropower. Think of it as a big battery, flexible enough to respond to various power demands. When the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, electricity is in high supply, so water is pumped to higher elevation reservoirs during this time. When the sun goes down or the wind stops blowing, water is released back to lower reservoirs, basically filling in the gaps during peak demand and generating the needed electricity. Pumped storage is the most dominant form of energy storage on the electric grid today. There's more than 21 gigawatts of storage capacity already installed in the United States, with future opportunities to more than double that, keeping the grid reliable and ready to add more renewable electricity to the mix at low operating costs.